Hello all. Now I'm happy to welcome you again for another session. It's about mobile browser testing. So now let's take a look at the index, and I have a little objective there, and let's discuss about that first. This is rather an old screenshot that I've been using for a long time, but this is much better now. The US smartphone market share was described there, but right now it is almost 80% of the smartphones are Android phones, and now everybody is aware of that now. And Android is massively shipping devices, and the year 2014 beginning that we are discussing now is going to be 2.5 billion devices going to be shipped, and in that 1.1 billion is going to be Android phones. So it's gaining its momentum at the year 2014, and as we've been discussing about mobile apps and mobile apps testing, it is native apps and it is hybrid apps and the web apps, mobile web apps. These are all the three different categories we can split this thing out. In that context, we've been already looking at mobile native apps, and I had been discussing about tools, SDKs, and hybrid app making tools like PhoneGap, RHO Mobile, and now we are in mobile browser testing. And a mobile browser testing always used to make very lightweight apps. For example, there is a hotel and they just want an introduction to their hotel and take some basic ordering or some contact form is there in the hotel. So obviously it will be like 5 to 6 pages of web pages, 5 to 6 web pages. So a native app, building a native app for that, displaying that very basic content is a costly affair. So we can build a very basic mobile web app that can be accessed by multiple smartphones. And the advantage of mobile web app is you can do that in multiple platforms. So that is how it goes. The other advantage is that you don't need to really install any app to a device to run your mobile web app. So that is a great advantage. So as I said earlier, I had a little objective there, and I want you to understand this whole ecosystem one more time in the perspective of mobile browser based application development and testing. Since there are multiple devices available in the market, so it is extremely difficult for app makers to invest on testing their app in multiple platforms. So one of the top mobile app company just revealed that their app is being accessed from 28,000 different mobile phone versions different OEMs and software versions in Android alone. So it is really huge that, and you will not be really sure about every time any device, your mobile app will work there. So people with simple objectives, with simple pages, simple information to share in a mobile world, so they can ultimately use a web app model. Though building a native app will give you the power of using OpenGL and power of using the device capabilities such as GPS, accelerometer, and gyroscope. A web app may not be able to really give you access to different API levels used in that devices. So that is a limitation for a web app. But if you are following the market, they have HTML5 now. So you can get a location, you can use a record video, audio, you can play back. So HTML5 is the one these companies' standards brought to us, and that is how people will choose to build simple apps that couldn't really or never really want to use any device capabilities, just an information sharing and some kind of data collection. They can use a web app. So when you're testing a web app, you need to also really consider multiple information, multiple access points. But at this point in time, I just really wanted you to take a look at the slide in front of you, that how the market share is been driven in the market. Like, so I've been trying to showcase this, the way the market is actually moving around. This is a 2012 slide, which is Android penetrated up to 68%, and 2013 it penetrated up to 78% of smartphones. Yeah. So that context, if your mobile web app is tested in Android phones, it will be really good. And also you need to take a look at different parameters. In the case of a web app, do you really need to test that in iOS devices also? Do you really need to test it in multiple devices? That I will be able to answer a little bit later. So in the case of iOS, it is 19.4, maybe a little down in 2013, and because of the giant leap taken by Android phones. And let me go back to my slides. And when you really test it in a device, a web app, then you need to check that whether your browser is compatible to that particular web app. That is what you will quickly check. And we will be talking about something called WebKit. WebKit is a browser engine, and you can take a look at webkit.org. And it's an open source project, and what they say is that we will take care of the rendering and you will take care of the UI elements. Because in my experience, we've been building, when I was working in OEM, we've been building mobile browser software, and we started testing our basic browser engine and the UI, because engine takes care of the rendering and JavaScripts, everything. For example, there is a tag h1 in your website, and the browser engine should understand that, and it is a header, and it should display the font sticker in the UI. So that is how an engine comes into picture. The moment you are using any mobile web browser, it is associated with an engine, a browser engine. Since WebKit taking momentum and the people started using WebKit as their primary browser engine, since it is open source project, an OEM can take WebKit, which takes care of all the rendering for them. They will need to really build only the UI part. So it will be very surprising to you at this point in time that who are all using WebKit. So the moment there is a web page, it's been rendered perfectly in an Android phone, you don't need to really worry about that whether this will render in an iPhone, because they both uses the same rendering engine called WebKit. Now you will understand why I really opened the page. You should really read the history of WebKit, and a lot of documentation available there in that site. And here I displayed the scope of browser compatibility testing depends on the target application audience and demographic target location. This is what I really wanted to bring it in this slide. If the application targets only high-end devices, then the scope is limited. Yes, because in the early stages, there were different rendering engines being used. For example, next slide will showcase you what are all the other browser rendering engines are in the market. Safari, Apple and its WebKit based rendering engine. Android, Google, vendor, and the rendering engine is again WebKit. Dolphin, again WebKit. BlackBerry, they are WebKit. Opera Mobile, they use an engine called Presto. Now they move to Chrome and Blink based browsers, and they are also going to be using a WebKit customization, which is the Chrome rendering engine. They will be using that. Palm HP is the vendor and WebKit. Micro:bee, Nokia, and Nokia uses Jikko rendering engine. Phantom, S40, Firefox, and old Blackberries uses Mango as a rendering engine. So that is how you notice in old BlackBerry phones certain elements never render and it will never display properly. And in IE mobile they have IE rendering engine, which is certain fonts never used to be displayed. And Opera Mini is Presto again, and OV Jikko again, and UC Web again they have UC engine to render. So this is that's why I said that the rendering engine takes huge amount of dependency when you're testing a mobile web page. So if you have a mobile web page that will be accessed by every other mobile phone out there in the market, you need to really test your rendering engine and the UI, your pages in every rendering engine and the UI. So you should really pick up all the rendering engines and test it there. So if you are delivering only to the top 3 smartphones, iPhone, Android and Windows Phone, you don't need to really worry about much. You only test it in either Android or iPhone and a Windows Phone, because Android and iPhone uses WebKit again. So if the page is getting displayed properly in an Android phone, it will also display properly in an iPhone. You should try that. That is how it goes. And then let me just move on to my next slide. And when designing applications, we have to make sure that the primary functionality feature of the application can be effectively used by the end user. So it's very important that the mobile web application must be tested with various browser engines in the market in general. To give maximum coverage, the below functions to be tested on each browser in order to find out what are the generic functionalities that could be implemented on the mobile web applications to reach maximum end users. As I told you before, if you are really testing a page that goes to everybody out there in the market, then you should really choose WebKit engine, Jikko engine, and then Presto engine, and then IE. So that is how it goes. What are the things you need to test? Click event. On document you click on something. On a link you click on something. On a form field you click on something. On paragraph, on an event. Yeah. DOM and AJAX. Basic DOM. Get element by ID. Create element. Create text node. So you should obviously writing test cases. I'll go deeper in that in the coming slides. Inner HTML. It's all JavaScripts, basic AJAX, and medium complex document object model test, and basic font cascading style sheets. That is what you will. That is how you will design your scope when you really write test cases for a mobile browser. And focus, whether it is getting focused, blur, scroll, touch actions, and orientation change. You change the screen from portrait to landscape, resize it, and then checking it. Screen width and height. So obviously you have to test the screen width and height. There are pages that will help you in that. I can get you to that level in a little later. Key events, key down, key press, key up, key code. It is the native keys, the hard keys, and you press key down and the page comes down. That is how you test that. Usable forms. The application can be designed using W3 best practices of use cases to make the mobile web application to be received by many audience without much usability or compatibility issues. You can check the tab2.com. It's a great example for adopting different compatibility and usability standards, screen sizes in various mobile operating systems and browser engines. So tab2 is a well-tested browser app. So you should really check that. I also shown a quirksmode.org m/tests/touch. In there, Quirksmode is the Bible for browser testing and browser compatibility testing and mobile browser testing. So you should really take a look at that at this point in time. You better go to this page and throw your mobile phone and then check different tests displayed there. Now I'm in a screen where W3 best practices for mobile web applications. W3 World Wide Web Consortium had taken constant efforts to eliminate the problems in compatibility and usability areas of mobile web applications. Yesterday I've been clicking from an app, an ad that opens the native browser, and there I saw a form. There is a drop down button. I tapped on it and the application crashes. So that is how the world is right now. So it's not being well tested for mobiles. And W3 had given certain web best practices, and Google also have Google Mobilizer. I can talk about that a little later. A page can be tested even without a mobile phone. That is it compatible for a mobile phone? there are online tools, and it is obviously free to test a mobile apps compatibility. So you can be able to see that a little later. And I have some best practices right now. Sorry. So the thematic consistency. Ensure that the content provided by accessing a URI yields a thematically coherent experience when accessing from different devices. So that is how it is. Actually a very straightforward approach. I had given you the title and the description. So you can so the thematically, how an URL yielding a coherent experience to a end user. If the color is in green in a page, in the index page, and then you navigate away to different pages, and it should be similar kind of color. So that is how it goes. Capabilities. Exploit different capabilities to provide an enhanced user experience. So different device capabilities will be taken a note when you are building a page. For example, if your core functionality is location, and you cannot give that to every device out there, because there are phones without GPS. So you should really take care of that. And when your location is not acquired by GPS, you should try to get it through internet, and there are multiple ways to get the location. And you cannot really try to access a camera from every devices out there. It will not be really possible. The accessibility basically. So you should really check that your web page, mobile web app, is having the basic device capabilities in order to reach multiple users. Take reasonable steps to work around different implementations. So different implementations of a mobile phone, different API levels and different screen sizes. You should take, for example, if I keep my index page as 500 KB, the page itself will take a lot of time to load. In a 2G network, it may take up to 3 minutes to load the basic index page of my app. If I started using huge images, then images has to be loaded first. And then if my buttons are only images, not links, then everything has to be loaded first. That is how I will navigate away. Then different devices may not be able to really make use of the mobile web app I'm building. Carry out testing on actual devices as well as emulators. So you cannot test a mobile web app only in an emulator. You should really use the devices as well to make sure that your web app is perfectly fine. So if your test manager or your leaders asking you to test only on emulators, you should really insist them to check on a device as well. Keep the URIs of site entry point short. So you might have been if because it's a mobile phone and people cannot enter long characters, long URLs. So you should really keep it short. Provide only minimal navigation at the top of the page. If you have a lot of navigations, then it will be very difficult for users to navigate away. So you should either back or go. You should keep like that. Take into account the trade-off between having too many links on a page and asking the user to follow too many links to reach out what they are looking for. So keeping a complete balance is really important. That if you have too many links, then users will be navigated away and they will be really cannot be able to enter back to where they started. So you should really make sure that as a tester, that when you are testing a web app, that there is a complete balance in there. Provide consistent navigation mechanisms. Users go to some page and there is no only the device back, and there is no back button in there. So if in Android phones there is a menu and in iPhone there is no menu there, so only there is a center button. So it will be very difficult for people to come back. So make sure you keep a back button there to reach the previous page. Access keys. Assign access keys to link in navigation menus and frequently accessed functionalities. Yes, that is really giving you that. Let's take a look at something important. Pop-ups. Do not have pop-ups at all. In a mobile web environment, do not have entertain pop-ups at all. And auto refresh. Do not really auto refresh your page. It is complete failure. Do not redirect automatically. So these are all the real stuff that will really annoy a user. External resources. Keeping the external resources minimum is a great advantage in a mobile web environment. So when you are testing the page, just make sure that you limit your external resources. Clarity. Use clear and simple language in a mobile web environment, because it's not an app. People download your pages to their mobile phones, and then if it is not clear, they have to re-download. And they have to navigate away. They have to check that what actually they are dealing with. So make sure you use clear, simple language in the mobile web environment. Go next, come back, like that. You cannot write complicated language there. And make sure that you use words which is native to mobile platforms. So that is another advice. So being a tester, you should really be able to insist everything of what you see, what you right now see here. Page size usable. Page size limit. Scrolling. Limit the scrolling to one direction unless secondary scrolling cannot be avoided. Suitability. Ensure the content is suitable for use in a mobile context. Central meaning. Ensure the material that is central to the meaning of the page precedes material that is not. So it explains it. Use of color. Ensure the information conveyed with color is also available without color. Large graphics. Do not use images that cannot be rendered by the device. Avoid large or high resolution images except where critical information would otherwise be lost. So it explains it. Background image readability. When using background images, make sure that content remains readable on the device. Page title. Provide a short but descriptive page title. So when you are converting test cases from here, you can say, you can write a test case that check the page title. You can write that and check the color contrast. You check that use of colors. Check that large graphics are not used, like that. That is more. No frames. And this is really annoying when there is people who use tiny devices. Do not entertain people to your development to use frames. Structures. Use features that markup language to indicate logical document structure. Tables, and there is a huge 4 scenarios I had added here. Table support. If the table support, try to avoid tables unless there is devices are known to support them. You try a table and then check all the top 3 smartphones, and if it is supporting, then use tables, or else don't use tables at all, because it often goes scattered and the information used to be lost. So that is how I advise people to stop using tables. And non-text alternatives. Provide a text equivalent for every non-text element. Images, specify size. Specify the size of images in markup if they have an instinct size. So you can specify the size of the image so that when loading the content, the systems will automatically take that into consideration. Images resizing. Resize images at the server if they have an intrinsic size. So you can resize the images in server and load it in the device. So in Opera there is a feature, there is a functionality, Opera config, where if you are using complex scripts, it will be rendered in the server as an image and it will be downloaded again to make you give you the readability. So Opera actually does that from 2003-4. So it's definitely a great feature that I used to use to read Chinese content. If there is no font support in that device, we can render that in the server and get the bitmap fonts. Minimize. Always try to make sure that your developers are using a minimalistic design practices when they are delivering a mobile browser app. Keep style sheets small. You cannot have a large style sheets and then download that in the device and make sure that the small tiny devices downloads that. So it all costs the user actually. So if you have a large content, large style sheets with a lot of information that is not used in the style sheets, then it will be downloaded and it will be shown. So if the background color is none, there is no need to specify that there. So meaning that making sure that style sheets are relatively smaller when you are really using that in a mobile environment. Default input mode. Specify a default text entry mode, language or input format if the device is known to support it. Tab order. Create a logical order through links, form controls and objects. Since this PowerPoint is really required stuff for you, I'll make sure that I'll upload it and I'll give you a link, and you will be able to get that PowerPoint in the site, and you'll be able to design the test cases based on this. And we'll move on. HTML5 is a new standard mobile web. Yes, of course, there is Canvas support, there is video and audio, and there is geolocation, and it is amazing. So since HTML5 doesn't really need flash, Adobe is not supporting this. And obviously in iPhones there is no flash player, so amazing HTML projects are available, and you should really check those amazing HTML5 pages to check the real capability of an HTML5. And largely that PhoneGap uses HTML5 and CSS, JavaScript, and almost all the capabilities that many of the apps required can be delivered using a mobile web app. And unless it is really a heavy app that really need to download a lot of content into the mobile and then make use of that one high resolution images OpenGL, you can deliver anything as a mobile web app to many number of devices. And since it is a content and it uses the browser interface, most of the crashes could be avoided if you have a mobile web app. So being a tester, you can suggest your management as well about your app to be built into HTML or a mobile web app. So everybody knows the famous Dropbox app. It was a native app earlier, and then it went to HTML5, JavaScript, CSS using PhoneGap, and now it went back to native. There may be different reasons, but it is a very good amount of time the Dropbox was running in HTML5, JavaScript, CSS app. So that is how I'm saying that HTML5 is having potential. Yeah. So this is at this point in time, it's not really required, but you can have a read in w3.org trcss mobile profile. It's just a profile. Mobile browser usability testing. It's not always it is usability is really an important thing that in a mobile environment, and in a browser environment it is more vulnerable that it has to be usable. If you start following, if you are development engineering, start following the best practices of a mobile phone web app development, so you will be able to see that positive change in the mobile app as well. So, and then there were tools to mobile test the mobile browsers, because at times you may not really need to test each and every scenario of a mobile web app by yourself. You may not really have the test cases, but in a few seconds you will be able to really test the validity of the mobile app being delivered to you, say using a validator from W3. So now I am going to check maybe m.facebook.com. Check this site validator.w3.org/mobile, and there you can check by file upload or direct input and giving an URI directly. Let me check that this address, because since it is a web pages, it can be fetched, it can be the source can be analyzed, and it can be checked. That is how this works. So now I could see the test result. One more time, validator.w3.org/mobile/check. You can pause the video and go there and then feed any mobile web app that you know. There are no critical defects. There were severe defects, no medium but low defects. Failures per category they display. There are tables, which is really severe because a mobile environment doesn't really support tables. That is why it is taken very severe defect in there. So the full list, what are all the warnings, defects, low, serious, medium defects, everything is available. Now you could see tables layout, valid markup, style sheet use. Whatever I gave you before, it's been into practice. You can check that. This is how I can check a mobile web apps complete structure. This tool I'll be taking a separate session. Google Mobilizer, yeah, this is another tool where I can enter simply an URL and then check whether it is fine or not. google.com/gwt/en. So I can just check. Okay, they don't really endorse, but you can log in and then check this Google Mobilizer. Let me just go navigate away. There are different tools. There is Opera Mobile has a simulator, and there is something called Mobi Ready. You can check. .mobi have an emulator, and you can use that as well. Probably the page might have been changed, and there is something in .mobi where you can select different items, maybe moved again. There are tools. There is something called Gomez. You can check that in the internet as well. There are certain links I had given down here. There are QuicksMode have different tests for mobile phones, mobile apps, and HTML5 can be tested here, HTML5test.com, and there is a good read about mobile usability testing in a mobile browser environment. I had given that here, and if you are testing a mobile web app, and the first thing you should do is to check on this quicksmode.com/m, and where there were different tests. You can learn so many tests, convert them into test cases, and then make sure that your mobile web app is compatible with so many other mobiles or not. So that is how it goes. This is a introduction to mobile browser testing. As I told you before, there can be three types of apps: native apps built by the native platforms. For example, Android native app built in Android SDK, iPhone native apps built in Xcode, Windows Phone native apps built in Microsoft Visual Studio, Silverlight.NET platform, and there are hybrid apps such as you deliver it using tools like PhoneGap, it's a hybrid app making tool, so you call this hybrid app making tools, so it's a hybrid app. And there are web apps where it's been built by HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and these three types of apps are out there in the market based on what based on the company they choose, based on the usage they choose the mobile app platform to be built, and you will be testing that. And so I gave you a small introduction for mobile browser apps. So I hope you like this session, and I'll see you again in much more detailed tool session for mobile browsers. Probably I'll showcase you Opera Simulator, how to test it. And thank you for watching, and goodbye.